Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are tackling really a core issue in eye care for kids. Progressive myopia, that's nearsightedness just getting worse and worse, and monitoring it requires incredibly precise tools.
Absolutely.
So we've looked into research focusing on a key study comparing 4 major optical biometry devices. You've got the Master 700, the Myopia Master, the Maya, and the Lenstar LS900. These machines are, well, they're crucial for modern myopia control. They measure the eye's axial length, basically how long the eyeball is. And our mission today is to figure out how reliable these devices are. We're talking repeatability, reproducibility.
Yeah, consistency.
Exactly. And use that to answer a practical question. How long do you actually need to wait between measurements to know for sure that you're seeing real eye growth, not just, measurement noise?
And that measurement interval is, well, it's everything, isn't it? Myopia usually kicks off in those school years, maybe 5 to 10 years old.
Right. School myopia.
Precisely. And the real danger isn't just needing thicker glasses, it's the excessive axial length growth, the AL growth. The eyeball is physically getting longer too fast.
Okay.
So the whole point of myopia management, whether it's special lenses, contacts, atropine drops, is to slow down that AL growth rate. If you're trying to reduce growth from, say, 0.4 millimeters a year, which is quite fast, down to maybe 0.1 millimeters a year, well, you absolutely need reliable measures.
I need to trust the numbers.
Exactly, measured in millimeters per year. Without that reliability, honestly, we're just flying blind. We can't tell if these often expensive treatments are even working.
Okay, so let's look at the study group used to test this reliability. The researchers had 22 myopic kids, average age around 11, with a prescription averaging about -3.5 diopters.
Yep, pretty typical group.
Seems like a standard cohort for kids who might be starting or already in myopia control.
Definitely. And what's interesting, I think, is the tech involved. All 4 devices measure axial length, sure, but they do it differently.
How so?
Well, the Master 700, which was the reference standard in the study, it uses swept source OCT. Think very fast, long wavelength light that gets good penetration.
Okay. The benchmark?
Right. But then you have the others. The Lenstar LS900 uses OLCR optical low coherence reflectometry. The Myopia Master uses PCI, that's partial coherence interferometry, and the Maya uses OLCI, optical low coherence interferometry.
So different ways of shining light and measuring the reflection.
Essentially, yes. Different types of light, different measurement geometries, all trying to get that super precise front to back length of the eye.
Which leads to the big questions for anyone listening, right? If you stick with one machine, is it consistent day to day?
Repeatability.
And if a kid moves, changes clinics, maybe goes from an Master to a Lenstar, can you trust the numbers? Do the machines agree?
Reproducibility, that's the key comparison challenge.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's start with that internal consistency. Repeatability, or as the study calls it, intra-subject reliability. Basically, can the same machine measure the same eye twice in a row and get pretty much the same number?
And the short answer here is yes. The good news is all 4 performed really well. The study reported good repeatability across the board.
Okay, that's reassuring.
It is. When we talk stats, we look at the intra-subject standard deviation, the SD. You can think of that SD as the kind of expected margin of error or the wiggle room on any single measurement.
Gotcha.
And for axial length, that wiggle room was tiny. It ranged from just 0.04 millimeters on the Lenstar up to 0.06 millimeters for the Myopia Master and the Maya. I mean, considering an eyeball is roughly 24 millimeters long, that's impressive precision.
Extremely precise.
Yeah.
But how does that wiggle room translate into, waiting time between appointments?
Yes. That's the clinically crucial part. The researchers calculated the minimum time you'd need between 2 measurements to reliably detect significant growth. And they defined significant growth as 0.1 millimeters per year. That threshold is often used because it suggests growth faster than what we'd consider normal for age-matched kids without rapid progression.
Okay, so how long do you need to wait to be sure that 0.1 millivar-year jump is real?
Right. To be 95% confident, it's not just the machine's inherent variability. This is where the devices showed slight differences. The Lenstar was quickest. It only required 5.0 months.
5 months, okay.
The Master 700 needed a bit longer, 5.6 months. But the Myopia Master and the Maya, they pushed that interval out a bit more, needing 6.6 and 6.7 months, respectively.
Interesting. So the Lenstar and Master are pretty close, 5 to 6 months, but the others need closer to 7.
That's right. But when you consolidate all that, the researchers landed on a clear clinical recommendation.
Which is
a time frame of at least 6 months between axial length measurements. That's what's generally needed to reliably spot that concerning level of progression, that 0.1 millimite year or more.
6 months minimum. That's a key takeaway.
Definitely.
But, okay, what about the flip side? Let's say a treatment is working. It's slowing growth down. Maybe the growth is only 0.05 millimeters per year now, which is great news.
Fantastic news, yes.
How long do you have to wait to reliably detect that much smaller positive change to confirm the treatment's success?
Well, detecting success requires more patience. Quite a bit more time, actually. If your goal is to reliably spot that smaller treatment-induced reduction, like the 0.05 millimar a year target, the interval needed basically doubles.
Doubles, really?
Yeah, we're talking about needing roughly 10 months for the Lenstar, all the way up to about 13.4 months for the Mia.
Wow, over a year for the Mia.
So, practically speaking, while 6 months is key for catching rapid progression, if you want solid proof that a treatment is working effectively, you probably need to think in terms of intervals closer to 12 months.
That is a huge clinical point. Checking axial length every 3 months, like some might do.
Could be misleading. Yeah.
Might just be picking up measurement noise.
Yeah.
Especially if you're looking for a subtle treatment effect, you might think something's happening or not happening based on the machine's error, not the child's actual eye growth.
Precisely. You risk making decisions based on unreliable data points if the interval is too short.
Okay, so internal consistency is good, but needs that 6 to 12 month window depending on what you're looking for. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Let's talk reproducibility. Inter-device agreement.
Yeah.
What happens if Timmy starts treatment at Clinic A with one machine and then moves and continues at Clinic B with a different machine? Do the measurements line up?
Yeah.
Using the Aisle-Master 700 as the benchmark.
Right. And overall, the agreement for axial length was generally pretty good. The study actually found the best reproducibility, the tightest agreement between the Aisle-Master and the Lenstar.
Okay, so those two track well together.
Very well. However, and this is a really critical detail, there was a statistically significant systematic difference. The Lenstar LS900 consistently measured axial length as being slightly longer than the Aisle-Master 700.
Longer. By how much?
By an average of 0.02 millimeters.
Hold on. 0.02 millimeters. That sounds incredibly tiny. Why does that even matter? Is that clinically relevant?
That is the perfect question. And you're right, it's tiny. If a child is always measured on the same machine, you don't really care about that tiny offset. The machine is precise relative to itself.
Right. Its internal repeatability is good.
Exactly. But that 0.02 millimeter difference is systemic. It's a consistent bias. Think of it like one scale always reading slightly heavier than another. So imagine Timmy, 11 years old, starts treatment. Clinic A uses the Aisle-Master, measures him at, say, 24.50 millimeter.
Okay.
6 months later, he moves. Clinic B uses a Lenstar. Now, if the Lenstar always reads 0.02 millimeters longer, even if Timmy's eye hasn't grown at all, the Lenstar might read 24.52 millimeter.
Ah, I see.
Or let's say his eye did grow, maybe by 0.10 millimeters. The Aisle-Master would show 24.60 millimeters. But the Lenstar, reading 0.02 millimeters longer inherently, would show 24.62 millimeters. If you just look at the numbers, 24.50, then 24.62, it looks like 0.12 millimeter growth. But the real growth was only 0.10 millimeters. That 0.02 millimeters is just the device difference.
So if you switch devices, you absolutely have to mentally subtract or add that known offset to compare apples to apples over time.
You have to account for it, otherwise you could misjudge the true rate of progression. And when we're tracking growth in hundreds of a millimeter per year, even a tiny systemic bias matters for longitudinal care.
That makes total sense now. It's small, but critical if platforms change. The courses also mentioned the widest range of agreement, the largest variance, was between the Aisle-Master and the Myopia Master for AL.
That's correct, yes. Their limits of agreement were a bit broader, suggesting slightly more potential variability between those two, specifically for axial length.
Okay, now let's shift gears from length to shape. What about corneal power? The curvature of the front of the eye, mean K.
Yeah, and here we saw a much bigger and maybe more complex difference emerge.
Oh, so...
Well, in measuring mean K, only one device showed a statistically significant difference compared to the Aisle-Master reference,
and that was...
the Myopia Master. It measured mean K significantly lower, meaning a flatter cornea reading by an average of 0.21 diopters.
Whoa, okay,
Yeah.
0.21 diopters. Now that sounds like a more substantial difference than the 0.02 millimeters in length.
It is. It's still precise measurement, don't get me wrong, but the difference between the devices is over 10 times larger, relatively speaking, than the axial length offset we just discussed.
Why such a difference there?
The sources point directly to the measurement technology again. The IOLMaster uses 18 light points projected onto the cornea. It creates quite a detailed map of the curvature.
Look how comprehensive.
The Myopia Master, on the other hand, uses a different approach. Just 4 equally spaced points plus a ring projected onto the cornea.
Fewer data points, simpler geometry.
Exactly. So it's logical that these different optical methods would capture and calculate the corneal shape slightly differently. The Myopia Master's method results in a measurably lower or flatter mean K reading compared to the IOLMaster's denser point map.
Okay, but why does this difference in corneal power matter so much for progressive myopia? Isn't axial length the main thing we track?
Axial length is definitely the primary driver and outcome measure for most myopia control. But understanding the cause of a child's myopia is also important. You see, myopia isn't just one thing. It can be mainly axial, the eye is too long. Or it can be mainly refractive, the cornea is too curved, or the internal lens is too powerful for the eye's length.
Or a mix of both, I guess.
Often a combination, yes. Now, think about it. If a device, like the Myopia Master here, systematically measures the corneal power as being lower or flatter, that could influence a clinician's judgment about why the child is myopic or progressing. If the cornea measurement seems flatter, it might make the axial length seem like it's playing an even bigger role by comparison.
So the device's measurement bias could subtly shift the perceived cause of the myopia more towards axial elongation.
It potentially could, yes. It might influence how a practitioner weighs the axial versus refractive components when assessing the child's specific type of myopia progression, and maybe even influence treatment strategy. It's an interesting implication.
That really is fascinating. A subtle measurement difference influencing the diagnostic thought process.
It's something to be aware of. And just to complete the picture, the study also looked at astigmatism using vector analysis, J0, J45.
And how did they compare there?
Excellent agreement across all devices. The differences were negligible, less than 0.11 diopters, which isn't considered clinically relevant. So good news for tracking astigmatism consistently.
Okay, good. So let's try to wrap this up. What does this all mean for you, the listener, whether you're in the clinic or just learning about this? The main takeaways seem pretty clear. Internally, these modern biometers are highly reliable. They give consistent readings on their own.
Rock solid repeatability, yeah.
But external consistency, comparing between different machines, especially if a patient switches, that needs real caution.
Definitely.
You've got that small but significant 0.02 millimeter systemic offset in axial length, particularly noted between the IOLMaster and LensStar, and that larger significant difference in corneal power measurement with the Myopia Master compared to the IOLMaster.
Absolutely. And perhaps the most critical point for day-to-day practice is the timing. Remember that minimum interval. Wait at least 6 months between axial length checks to reliably detect that concerning a 0.1 mil a year growth rate.
6 months minimum for detection.
And if you're trying to confirm that a treatment is successfully slowing growth down to smaller rates, like 0.05 millinar a year, you need to stretch that interval out closer to 12 months for reliable confirmation.
Okay. So be patient, especially when looking for treatment success.
Patience and scheduled consistency.
Now, I want to leave everyone with a final thought, something to mull over, sparked by our expert here. It really ties the technology back to the clinical decisions. We mentioned that the Myopia Master specifically includes tools designed to help clinicians figure out if a child's myopia is driven more by axial length or more by refractive components like the cornea.
That's correct. It tries to help differentiate those drivers.
So here's the provocative question.
Given that this study found the Myopia Master measures corneal power, significantly differently, specifically lower than the reference IOLMaster, how might that inherent measurement difference in the device itself influence a practitioner's conclusion when they use that device to decide if the myopia is primarily axial or refractive?
Could the tool itself, because of how it measures, subtly steer the diagnosis towards one cause over the other?
And therefore perhaps steer the subsequent treatment choice. It's a really important question about how technology interacts with clinical interpretation, something definitely worth considering when you're looking at biometric data, especially if comparing across different platforms.
A critical point indeed. Food for thought as we continue to refine myopia management.